Hello, mighty companions. This is Earl Purdy. I want to welcome you to Hardcore Course in Miracles here on Facebook Live. And we're going to talk about how only our Creator's plan for our happiness and peace will work. Only the plan of love will work. We're going to talk about the plan that will work. What will absolutely work for your happiness right here on A Course in Miracles with Earl Purdy. And we're going to kick it off with our brother John Christmas singing the song that joins us all together at www.johnchristmas.com. Here we go. Let's go deep now. Let's take a breath.
There's a call for a God, I see it everywhere. Everybody's running scared, and everything is turning upside down. But the words I hear, they keep coming through from deep inside of me and you. It's telling us that love is who I am. You and me were not that far apart. Yeah, we're beating the same heart. We've been together from the start. Tell me, can you hear it? Tell me, can you feel it? Put your arms around it and know that we are one. Yeah, yeah, we are one. Now let's come together and understand that Christ was born inside of every man. He's waiting for us to choose him as ourselves. When you choose him, you know you choose me too. And everyone becomes a part of you. And then you will know that love is who I am. You and me were not that far apart. Yeah, we're beating the same heart. We've been together from the start. Tell me, can you hear it? Tell me, can you feel it? Put your arms around it and know that we are one. Yeah, yeah, we are one. Oh, we are one.
Mighty companions, I'm Earl Purdy. I want to welcome you to Hardcore Course in Miracles. We're going to do lesson 71 from A Course in Miracles workbook. Only God's plan for salvation will work. Only the Creator's plan for our peace and happiness will work. I'm going to tell you what the plan is that is guaranteed that if you apply it, will bring you peace and would bring you total fulfillment. It's possible, and we're going to talk about how it's possible. Hardcore Course in Miracles.
You and me were not.
It's page 121 in the workbook. Page 121.
Being the same heart. We've been together from the start. Tell me, can you hear it? Tell me, can you feel it? Put your arms around it and
love that. That was Brother John Christmas. Welcome to www.johnchristmas.com. Welcome to A Course in Miracles Hardcore for Course in Miracles students. I am Earl Purdy, and this is especially geared toward those who are studying the Course in Miracles, even though anyone's welcome to watch any of my presentations because it will be helpful to you, I hope, anyway. But we're going to be on lesson 71, page 121 in the Course in Miracles workbook. And we're going to, I guess that woke everybody up, didn't it? Okay, we're going to be on Only God's Plan for Salvation Will Work, which is the same as saying only love's plan, only the truth's plan for our peace will work. And what is the truth plan for our peace? What is the absolute, the way you can count on allowing yourself to eventually have peace and happiness? Well, it's lesson 71. And one of the things I really want to do is Earl Purdy, that's my name. I want to put the emphasis on practical application of the course. Hold on just a second, be right back. Right back. All right, thank you. Now, don't forget, I'm the divine repetition teacher. The Course in Miracles talks about all the time. In the 40 years that I've been teaching and learning the Course in Miracles, what I found out is that, do you know that the way to get the Course in Miracles to work for you is to actually study and learn the Course in Miracles the way the Course in Miracles says you should do the Course in Miracles, not the way necessarily you've learned in the past. So I'm going to give you the guidelines to the course. The guidelines to the course are, remember only this. Remember only this. You need not believe the ideas. It says you need not accept the ideas. The course says you need not even welcome the ideas. Some of the ideas you may actively resist. Some of the ideas you will find hard to believe. Some of the ideas may startle you, but the Course says you're not being asked to judge and analyze the ideas at all. I'm going to say that to you again. You will not learn the Course in Miracles by analyzing it. The Course in Miracles itself says in the text that the ego, the mind that is full of fear and guilt, the ego analyzes. The wrong-mindedness analyzes the Course. The Course says the Holy Spirit, which is right-mindedness, accepts. And I would like to add the Course in Miracles says accepts and remembers. So it's much more important that you remember what the Course in Miracles says than that you understand what the Course in Miracles says. But really, the Course in Miracles teaches that to accept is to understand. So we're going to go into a lesson that I considered, in the 40 years I've done a Course in Miracles, there are certain workbook lessons that have had the most impact. And this is one of those workbook lessons. Only God's plan for salvation will work. That's, and the Course in Miracles says salvation means forgiveness, right-mindedness, peace. These are the Course in Miracles definitions of salvation. And God is love, the creator. So you didn't create yourself. You didn't create yourself. You didn't create yourself. You did not create yourself. The Course in Miracles says one of the most important things that you can tell yourself is that you did not create yourself. And I'm going to tell you, you didn't create yourself. You did not create yourself. If you would tell the truth, you don't really know how you came into existence. And it's much more than the fact that you were born as a baby, okay? And every one of us knows that. So I'm going to go through this, and my emphasis is on repetition. I'm the divine repetition remembering teacher. The Course in Miracles says the way that you accept new ideas, you have to repeat those ideas. So let's go through it. It says, now the ego The ego is the part of us that doesn't want to focus in on the truth. It's the part of us, the Course in Miracles says, that thinks we're separate from love, separate from God. It's the part of us that thinks that it's a body. The ego is the part of us, the Course says, that doesn't know the truth, the false self. The false self. And your true self is love. It's the loving self that is eternal and created by the Creator. But your false self is the self that you think is you, that's merely this separate body. And the Course in Miracles says you may not realize that your false self, your ego, has set up a plan for your salvation, which is your happiness, that's in opposition to God's. So do you know the Course says there's a part of your mind that has come up with a plan for your happiness that is the opposite to the Creator's plan for your happiness. Do you know the Course in Miracles says it is this plan, the plan of your ego, the plan of wrong-mindedness, the Course says, in which you believe. The Course says you all believe in a plan that's directly opposite to God's plan for your happiness. And I'm going to tell you what that plan is that you believe. Whenever you're unhappy, you know you believe in that plan. In case you're wondering how you can tell when you're using the wrong plan, you're not at peace, okay? You feel dissatisfied. You feel like you're not getting what you want. So the Course in Miracles says that that's the plan that our ego believes in, a plan that's the opposite to God, the plan that's the opposite to love. It's on page 121, lesson 71 in the workbook, the Foundation for Inner Peace version of A Course in Miracles. Only God's plan for salvation will work. Now, the Course in Miracles says, since this plan that you and I believe in is the opposite of God's plan, the Course in Miracles says you also believe that to accept God's plan in place of your plan is to be damned. Do you know that we come up with our own ideas about what we think is going to make us happy? Then the Course in Miracles says, then we come up with a plan, right? And the Course in Miracles is saying there aren't really but two plans, God's plan and the plan that we make up that doesn't work. And it's going to describe to us exactly what that plan is that does not work, and also the plan that does work for your happiness. And so the Course in Miracles says, since this plan that we've come up is the opposite of God's plan, then it says we also believe our ego also believes that to accept God's plan in place of the ego's plan is to be damned. So the Course in Miracles says, of course, don't you know that it sounds insane and preposterous to think that to accept God's plan instead of the ego's plan is to be damned. There's just a plan of love and a plan of fear. There's a plan of peace and a plan that causes conflict. So the Course in Miracles says, after we've considered just what the ego's plan is, after we've considered just what the wrong-minded plan is, perhaps, you will realize that however preposterous it may be, the Course says you do believe in the false plan, the wrong plan, even though that plan is preposterous, because it's preposterous for us to believe that we're going to come up with a plan for our peace and happiness that works better than God's plan, better than the Creator's plan. That's what the Course in Miracles is saying. But the Course in Miracles says that we do, though. We believe in the wrong plan for happiness, the ego's plan. So what is the wrong plan? What is the plan for your happiness that will never work as far as giving you any kind of consistent peace and happiness? What is the ego's plan? What is the plan of the false self? There's a true self in you, and then there's a false self. There's a fearful self, and there's a loving self. The loving self in you is real, and the fearful, angry, guilty self, the Course in Miracles says that's the ego. That's the false self. Okay, well, the wrong plan, the ego's plan for salvation, centers around holding grievances. Okay, so the wrong plan, the plan that will never bring you happiness, the plan that will never bring you joy, centers around holding grievances. So what does the ego's plan maintain? What does the wrong plan for your happiness maintain? Well, the wrong plan maintains that if someone else spoke or acted differently, if some external circumstance, or event were changed, you would be saved, you would be happy. So, what is the plan that will never work? Well, the plan that will never work is if you tell yourself that if somebody else spoke differently, if somebody else acted differently, if there was some type of external circumstance that was different, if there was an event that was different, then you would be saved, you'd be happy. So the wrong plan says that if somebody, if my mother was different, I'd be happy. If my husband was different, I'd be happy. If my boss were different, I'd be happy. If the president was different, I'd be happy. The wrong plan that will never work is based on the idea that if somebody else spoke differently, if somebody else acted differently, then you would be happy. If some external event changed, then you would be happy. If some circumstance on the outside of you changed, then you would be happy. And so that means you're seeing the source of your salvation, the source of your happiness is constantly perceived as outside of yourself. Do you know that if you believe the source of your happiness is outside of yourself, that if someone else spoke or acted differently, if there was some different situation or circumstance, then you'd be happy? That's the plan of the ego. That is the plan for your happiness that will not consistently work. It won't work. If you make your happiness dependent on what everybody else around you does, if you make your happiness based on everybody else speaking differently, acting differently, then you are using the ego's plan. You're using the false plan for happiness. It will not work. It will not work. It will not work. It will not work. So each grievance you hold is a declaration. What kind of declaration is each grievance that you hold? Each grievance that you hold is an assertion. It's a declaration in which you believe that says, if this were different, I would be saved. So the idea that will keep the ego going, the idea that will keep your unhappiness going, the idea that keeps conflict and fear and unhappiness going is this. Listen very carefully. If this were different, I would be saved. If this were different, I would be happy. That's a grievance. The Course in Miracles defines that as a grievance. Whenever you tell yourself, if they were different, I'd be happy. If they spoke or acted differently, then I would be happy. If this situation or circumstance outside of myself changed, then I would be happy. That's the ego plan. That's the false plan. That's the plan for your happiness that will not work. And I can tell you one of the most obvious reasons why the attitude of, if everybody else were different, I'd be happy. I'll tell you why that doesn't work. It's obvious why it doesn't work. Because you can't control anybody else's behavior. You cannot control how anybody else acts. You cannot control how anybody else speaks. You cannot really control how anyone else behaves. You can't really control all of the outside circumstances in your life. So that attitude of telling yourself, if something or someone outside of yourself were different, then you would be happy, that will never work. That will never bring you true happiness. Because the change of mind that's necessary for your happiness, you're demanding that everybody else change their mind, that everybody else be different. And then when everybody else is different, then that's when you will be happy. That's when you will have peace. So the Course in Miracles says the change of mind necessary for peace is thus demanded of everyone and everything except who? Except yourself. So the ego plan, the false plan, the wrong plan, the plan that keeps unhappiness and grievances going, is when you come up with a plan for your happiness that's based on the idea that if someone else spoke or acted differently, if this circumstance outside of yourself changed, then you will be happy. Then you will be peaceful. That's the plan of the ego. That is the plan for love and happiness. That will not work. It will not work. You know, sometimes when I do couples counseling, one of the things that's really interesting is that mostly what's happening is that they are saying, no matter what they're saying, the problem is, in most cases, what the two people are saying to each other is, if you were different, then I'd be happy. No, if you were different, 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 I'd be happy. That's what most people are saying whenever they are unhappy. They're usually saying in a relationship, if you were different, I'd be happy. If you changed, I'd be happy. If you acted differently, then I would be happy. I am using you to keep myself unhappy, because if I set it up where my happiness cannot happen unless you are a certain way, unless you change in a certain way, then I am constantly seeing my happiness as outside of myself, which I cannot control. So I will never be able to be truly happy. Listen to me. You cannot control another person. You cannot control another person. You cannot control another person. If you have decided that you're not going to be happy until your boyfriend change, your girlfriend change, your wife change, your boss change, whenever you tell yourself that it's something outside of yourself that's got to change in order for you to be happy, you are using the plan for your happiness that will not work. Because the Course says the wrong mind demands that everybody and everything change except itself. In other words, I want everybody around me to change, but I don't. I'm not going to change, but I want everybody around me to change in order for me to be happy. That will not work. That will not work. That will not give you happiness. So what is the role assigned to your own mind in this plan? What is the role that you've given to your own mind? Well, the Course says the role that you've given to your mind is for your mind to come up with or determine what other than itself must change if you're going to be saved, if you're going to be happy. So I'm using my mind to come up with, I'm using my mind to determine what is it other than my own mind that needs to change in order for me to be happy. I'm using my mind to come up with how my mother needs to change. I'll use my mind to come up with how my children need to change. I'll use my mind to come up with how the president needs to change, the election needs to. I'll use my mind to come up with how everyone else around me needs to change in order for me to be happy. My grievance is I'm upset with you because you're not acting out the role that I've assigned to you for my happiness. That's what I'm upset about. You're not speaking and acting the way that I want you to. And I'm not going to allow myself to be happy until you change. So I'm using my mind to determine what other than my own mind needs to be changed in order for me to be happy. Now, I want you to think about what I'm saying, because I'm telling you, this lesson right here has produced more miracles in my life and more miracles in the life of the people that I've worked with than almost any other lesson in the Course in Miracles. Because if you hear what I'm saying tonight, you will save yourself so much pain and so much anxiety. Stop using your mind to figure out how everybody else needs to change. Stop using your mind to figure out what's wrong with everybody else. Stop using your mind to focus on what other people are lacking and what they need to do to be different in order for you to be happy. That's the wrong plan. That's the ego plan. That's the plan for happiness and peace that will never succeed. So let me tell you about what the Course in Miracles calls the insane plan, okay? According to this insane plan, what is the insane plan? That everybody else needs to change except me. So that means any perceived source of salvation, any perceived source of happiness is accepted, provided that it will not work. Do you know that if you're a person that truly doesn't love yourself the way that you should, and if you're a person that thinks you're guilty, or if you think you're sinful, or if you think you're bad in any kind of way, then there's a part of you that doesn't believe that you deserve to be happy. I mean, why should you be happy when you're not adequate, when you're not enough? So the Course in Miracles is saying that part of your mind in the insane plan, any perceived source of happiness is acceptable, provided it will not work. There's, I want a relationship, but I'm going to give my attention to the person who doesn't want me. I'm going to love the person who doesn't love me. In other words, if I don't believe that I deserve to be happy, then I am going to follow plans that do not work. Do you know that the main plan that does not work is the plan that somebody else has to be different in order for you to be happy? So the Course in Miracles says, if you keep looking for your happiness where your happiness isn't located, this ensures that the fruitless search will continue. So what is the fruitless search? Well, you have this illusion. You have this false idea, and it persists. Although this hope has always failed, even though you've seen it fail over and over again, and you looking outside of yourself, when you get that car, you're going to be happy. Then you get the car and you're not happy for very long. If I lose weight, I'm going to be happy. Then you lose weight, and then for very long, you're unhappy about something else that you need in order to be happy. I got to get that house. Then you get that house, and then after a while, I got to get another house. I got to get a better house. The ego part of us is always telling us, if this were different, I'd be happy. I can't ever be satisfied because I've got to keep making everything different. I got to change everything all the time in order to be happy. So the Course in Miracles says, even though that hope has always failed, there's a part of you that will say there's still grounds for hope in other places. There's still grounds for hope of happiness in other things. There's a part of your mind that tells you another person is going to serve better. I love how the Course in Miracles says another person will yet serve better. The Course in Miracles says that basically when you are selfish and when you are not aware and when you are in your ego, that you really just basically want people to serve you. That's what I'm upset about. You're not serving me the way I want you to serve me. And then the Course in Miracles says your ego, the part of you that never wants you to be happy, your false self, is always going to tell you, well, another situation will yet offer success. You just need another. The problem is with this job, and so what you need to do is get another job, and then that job is going to make you happy. No, your happiness is not going to come from anything outside yourself. Your happiness is not going to come from anything outside yourself. That doesn't mean that you can't experience happiness with things that appear to be outside of yourself. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that you can't be here and you can't be enjoying your home, enjoying your car, enjoying your friends, no. But that happiness, that enjoyment is going to come from your change of mind. It's going to come from your using your mind to not figure out how to change everybody else, but to use your mind to change you. So the Course in Miracles is saying that is the ego's plan for your salvation. That is the wrong-minded plan for your happiness. And the wrong-minded plan for your happiness is going to always be telling yourself, if this were different, I would be happy. If this were different. If you were different, I'd be happy. If that were different, I'd be happy. If this were different, I'd be happy. If that were different, I'd be happy. If they were different, I would be happy. If they were different, I would be happy. If you were different, I would be saved. If you were different, I'd be happy. I would be happy. If the weather was different, I'd be happy. If there were mountains around me, then I would be happy. If I had that perfect mate outside of myself, I would be happy. If I had that new pair of pants, I would be happy. If I made that sale, I would be happy. If I made that money, I would be happy. The source of your happiness is being seen as outside of yourself. If you tell yourself, if this were different, I would be saved, do you know that if you keep telling yourself that, you will never be happy? Now listen to me. So this is in strict accord with the ego's basic doctrine. So what is fear and unhappiness? What is the ego's basic doctrine? Seek, but do not find. Do you know that a person that doesn't know the truth and doesn't really love themselves yet and has some level of guilt and separation and fear, insecurity, self-hatred, with any part of you that has that attitude, any part of a person that has that attitude, the Course in Miracles says they are operating according to the ego's basic doctrine. And the ego's basic doctrine is seek, but do not find. The part of you that doesn't love you, that part of you, if it's there, It's always trying to get you to want stuff but never really get it. Seek for stuff and don't really find it. The doctrine of the ego is what? Seek but do not find. And what could more surely guarantee that you won't find happiness than to channel all your efforts in searching for happiness where it's not? What could more surely guarantee that you're not going to find happiness than to keep seeking for happiness where the happiness isn't located? What could better assure that you will not reach the happiness and the peace that you want than to keep looking for the happiness and peace that you want where it is not located? Okay, that's the plan that doesn't work. I just got through sharing with you the plan that will never work. If this were different, I'd be happy. Seeking and not finding. Wanting your happiness and your peace to be dependent on how somebody else thinks, acts, or behaves. Always believing that your happiness is going to come with the next circumstance, the next event. Using your mind only to come up with how everybody around you needs to change except your own self, your own mind. That's the ego's plan. That's the wrong plan. Okay? Now you with me? Okay. So the Course in Miracles then says God's plan for salvation will work. The plan of peace and love will work. The plan that comes from love, God is love. So the plan that comes from love, the plan that comes from the Creator, the Course in Miracles says that plan will work. So when you follow God's plan, when you follow the Creator's plan, when you follow love's plan, it will work. Why will the Creator's plan work? Why will love's plan work? Well, by following the direction of God, by following the direction of the higher self, by following the direction of spirit. Do you know that you're going to seek for your salvation where it is? You're going to seek for your peace and happiness where it is. If you follow the guidance of your higher self, if you follow the guidance of essence, if you follow the guidance of love, if you follow the guidance of God, if you follow the guidance of your higher self, you will seek for your happiness and your joy and your peace where it is. So it is possible to have happiness and peace and joy. It truly is possible. But you have to follow the direction of your Creator, your guide, love. I'm saying all these different words because people have so many different words for God. But I'm talking about the higher self, your greater self. Now, if you want to succeed, do you want to succeed? Well, if you want to succeed, as God promises you, you will succeed. You must be willing to seek there only. You must be willing to seek where your inner self, where your Creator tells you to seek. Do you know that there's only love guiding you or fear guiding you according to the Course in Miracles? There's only the mind that thinks it's separate from everything and everyone that's guiding you, or the mind in you that knows it is joined in unity and one with everybody else that's guiding you. So you either following the guidance of spirit or you following the guidance of fear, your ego. You either following the guidance that you're making up as you go along, or you're following the guidance that's coming from your higher self, God, your greater self. Those are the only two voices you're listening to according to the Course in Miracles. So if you're not willing to follow in the way that love and truth shows you, as Course calls it, God, he says, then the Course says, don't you know your purpose is divided? Your purpose is divided. If you're following the guidance of your fear and you're following the guidance of love, if you're following the guidance of God, but you're also following the guidance of your own made-up mind, then the Course in Miracles says you have a divided purpose. So what does that mean? Well, when you have a divided purpose, you're going to attempt to follow two plans for your happiness that are diametrically opposed in every way. So if you're trying to follow your guidance that you're making up for yourself and trying to follow the guidance that your Creator is trying to give you, and you're trying to do both of those, then don't you know that that means you have a divided purpose and that you're following two plans that are totally opposite in every way? So how can you tell when you're following two opposite plans for happiness? Well, This is how you can tell when you're following two opposite plans for happiness. The result can only bring confusion. Are you going through a lot of confusion right now? Then you're trying to follow two plans. Are you feeling misery right now? Then you're trying to follow two plans. The plan that is based on your ego, which is the part of you that thinks it's separate, or you are trying to follow the plan of God, the part of you that believes in love. But if you're trying to follow two plans, then you're going to feel confusion. If you're trying to follow two plans for your happiness, you're going to feel misery. You're going to feel a deep sense of failure and a deep sense of despair. So if you are feeling a deep sense of failure right now, if you're feeling a deep sense of despair right now, if you're feeling misery in any way, if you're feeling confusion in any way, then it means you're trying to follow two plans. You're trying to follow the plan that the world is giving you, the plan that your ego is made up, and you may be trying to also follow the plan of love and the plan of truth. Now, we have already been told that the plan that won't work, the ego plan, the plan that's based on fear, and that plan is you telling yourself, if this were different, you'd be happy. Basing all your happiness on believing that somebody else needs to speak and act differently, some external situation outside yourself. If that situation changed, then you would be happy. That's the wrong plan. That's the one that doesn't work. But the Course in Miracles says there's another plan, the plan of God, the plan of truth. And if you try to follow both those plans at the same time, the Course in Miracles says you will feel miserable and that you will feel confused and you'll feel a deep sense of failure and you'll feel a deep sense of despair. So are you feeling failure? Are you feeling a sense of failure? Are you feeling a sense of despair? Are you feeling a sense of misery? Are you feeling any confusion? Then that means you're trying to follow two plans for happiness that are directly opposite. So how can you escape all this confusion? How can you escape the despair? How can you escape the sense of failure? How can you escape from your anxiety and your worry? The Course says, very simply, the idea for today is the answer. Only God's plan will work. Only love's plan will work. Only the plan of the truth will work. It's only exhausting when you're trying to do things on your own without God. See, that's the thing. The Course in Miracles is a book that's trying to allow us to remove the blocks to our awareness of love in God. If you're exhausted, it's because you are trusting in you. According to the Course, it's saying if you're exhausted, it's because you are trusting in your own strength, separate from God. That if you are spiritually attuned and if you are spiritually aligned, things should be more harmonious. You should see things as being easier and more peaceful for you. So a lot of anxiety and worry and exhaustion, that's your way of knowing that you're not following God's plan. You're not following the divine plan for your life. You're following the plan that your ego is making up, a plan that you're making up. So you have to remind yourself that only God's plan for salvation, which is your happiness, your right-mindedness, your peace, will work. So what's the first thing you need to recognize? That the plan of your Creator, and you didn't create yourself. You didn't create yourself. If you created yourself, then you would know what to do with it. You would know every organ and everything in your body. Anything you build yourself, you know intimately how it operates, what it's made out of, but you don't know that about yourself. So that's obvious that you didn't make yourself. So the Course in Miracles is saying that only God's plan, only your Creator's plan for your happiness will work. And there can be no real conflict about this, because there is no possible alternative to God's plan that will save you, that will give you the peace and the joy. There is no plan opposite to love's plan that's going to work. I don't know how to break it to me. I don't know how to break it to you. But the only thing that's going to solve the world's so-called problems is love. 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 But the Course in Miracles and most truth books teach that we've been taught to think of love as something that's weak, that means that we are easily taken advantage of, or that love is what we can't really depend on. But the truth is, that's not love. Love is actually strong. True love is actually powerful. Now, the stuff we give to each other, which is called specialness, is not real love. So we give specialness and we take it away. We give people our attention, then we take it away. We care about them, then we take it away. Take that caring away. I like for you to think about old boyfriends or old girlfriends that you professed undying love to in the past. When you promised each other you were going to be in each other's life forever, you were going to love each other forever no matter what. And now you probably don't think about them that much, if at all. People that you vowed the most intense love for. Because what we give, according to A Course in Miracles, we don't give love, we give specialness. We make people special. And then if they don't keep the bargains, if they don't keep the agreements, if they don't speak and act the way we want them to, then we take the specialness back. We take their specialness back. That's not real love. That's not real happiness. So the Course in Miracles says, there is no possible alternative to God's plan that will help you. There is no alternative to the plan of God that will help you. God's is the only plan that's certain in its outcome. So if you want to be in a plan that you can be certain about, if you want a plan for your happiness that you can count on, that you can be certain about, the Course in Miracles says, God's is the only plan that must succeed. Our Creator's plan is the plan that will succeed. The only plan that will succeed for your happiness is your Creator's plan for your happiness. So let us practice recognizing this certainty today. Let's rejoice that there is an answer. Let's be glad. Let's be glad about what? Let's be glad that there is an answer, that there is an answer to what seems to be a conflict with no resolution at all. Be glad that there is an answer to whatever conflict that you're having right now. Be glad that there is a way for you to have peace and joy and happiness, and you can count on it. Be glad. All things are possible to God. That's what the next line said. All things are possible to God. All things are possible to God. Tell yourself, all things are possible to God. All things are possible to God. I say all things are possible to God. I say all things are possible to God. What you say? All things are possible to God. God is love. All things are possible to love that created us. All things are possible to the love that created us. All things are possible. All things are possible to God. There is nothing that God can't do. There is nothing that God can't do. There's nothing that God can't do. There's nothing that God can't do. There is nothing that God can't do. There is nothing that God cannot do. There's nothing that love can't do. There's nothing that love can't do. There's nothing that your Creator cannot do. Salvation, which is peace and happiness, must be yours. Because of God's plan, happiness must be yours. Because of God's plan, happiness must be yours. God's plan cannot fail. Love's plan cannot fail. How can you tell if it's your plan? It looked like it failed. God's plan cannot fail. If you've had a plan that's failed, it's not God's plan, because God's plan cannot fail. Anytime you have felt confusion, misery, despair, it's because you've been following your plan and not the Creator's plan. So what do we want to do to make this real for us? What do we want to do to make this real? Well, what do? You begin. Where is it? Okay. You begin by thinking about today's idea. First, you got to realize that today's idea has two parts to it. Now, each part of today's idea makes equal contribution to the whole idea. The idea for today, only God's plan for salvation will work. Only God's plan for peace will work. Only God's plan for happiness will work. That idea has two parts. Here are the two parts. Part one, God's plan for salvation, which is your peace, your right-mindedness, your harmony, your happiness. That plan will work. God's plan will work, and other plans will not. I'll say it again. God's plan will work, and other plans will not. God's plan will work, and other plans will not. God's plan will work, and other plans will not work. God's plan will work, and other plans will not work. God's plan will work, and other plans will not work. Now, don't allow yourself to become depressed. Depressed about what? Don't allow yourself to become angry about what? Don't become depressed and angry because your plan will not work. The plan that you make up. Now, what was the plan that the Course in Miracles told us was our plan? The Course in Miracles says, our plan is this, is that if someone else spoke or acted differently, if some external event or circumstance changed, then that's when we will be happy. The Course in Miracles says that's our plan. Our plan is any plan that has to do with something outside of ourselves causing us to be happy. So that's the wrong plan. That's the wrong plan. So don't become depressed and angry because your plan won't work, that other plans for happiness besides God's won't work. It's inherent in the first part, which is only God's plan will work. Only the Creator's plan will work. So, and in the first idea that only God's plan will work, do you know that is where your full release from all your own insane attempts and mad proposals to free yourself? What's happening right now? Course in Miracles is trying to give you full release from all your own insane attempts and mad proposals to free yourself. Release yourself. Release yourself from all of your mad proposals to make yourself happy. Release yourself from all of your own insane attempts to make yourself happy. They've led to depression and anger. Why is the average person so upset? It's because all the scripts that they've written for everyone around them in life has not turned out the way they wanted the scripts to turn out. And so they are depressed and angry because they've convinced themselves that their happiness depends on somebody else speaking differently, acting differently, some external situation or circumstance changing, and then they'll be happy. The Course in Miracles says, of course, that's going to lead to depression and anger because it's not going to work consistently. But God's plan will succeed. Listen to me. God's plan will succeed. It will lead to release and joy, release and joy, release and joy, release and joy. God's plan will succeed. It will lead to release and joy, release and joy, release and joy, release and joy. Love's plan will succeed. It will lead to release and joy, release and joy, release and joy. So remembering this, let's devote the remainder of this practice period. We're going to ask God to reveal God's plan to us. God, will you reveal your plan to us? Higher power, will you reveal your plan to us? Love, will you reveal your plan to us? So what do you do next? You ask God very specifically. This is what you do. You ask the Creator very specifically, what would you have me do, God? Where would you have me go, God? What would you have me say? And to whom? That's what you do. The Course in Miracles says, Instead of telling yourself, if this were different, if they were different, then I'd be happy. Immediately, you ask your Creator, you say, what would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What do you want me to say? Who do you want me to say it to? I'm just going to paraphrase it. What do you want me to do, God? Where do you want me to go, God? What do you want me to say, God? Who do you want me to say it to? What do you want me to do? Where do you want me to go? What do you want me to say? Who do you want me to say it to? Ask the Creator, ask Spirit, what do you want me to do? Where do you want me to go? What do you want me to say? And who do you want me to say it to? Then you give God full charge of the rest of the practice period. You let your Creator tell you what needs to be done by you in God's plan for your happiness. You let your Creator tell you what needs to be done by you. The Course in Miracles tells you what the Creator says needs to be done by you. So you could actually read and study the material and answer that question. So when will you hear God's answer? How will you be able to hear God's answer? Well, the Course in Miracles says God will answer in proportion to your willingness to hear God's voice. Your Creator will answer you in proportion to your willingness to listen to your Creator. Your Creator will respond to you in proportion to your willingness to hear your Creator's voice. Refuse not to hear. Refuse not to hear. I am going to hear my Creator's voice, and I will hear my Creator's voice in direct proportion to how much willingness I have to listen to my Creator's voice. But the very fact that you're watching this presentation, the very fact that you're doing this exercise proves that you have some willingness to listen. Do you know you have some willingness to listen? You would not be listening to me right now if you did not have some willingness to listen. So this is enough to establish your claim to God's answer. You do have enough willingness to establish your claim to God's answer because you are listening to me right now. So tell yourself often, what should you do? Tell yourself often that God's plan for salvation and only God's plan for salvation will work. Tell yourself, my Creator's plan for my happiness and peace and forgiveness and right-mindedness. Only my Creator's plan will work. Tell yourself, only God's plan will work. Only my Creator's plan will work. Only love's plan will work. Only love's plan, only the plan of truth will work. And then you have to be alert. What is it that you need to be alert to? You need to be alert to all temptation to hold grievances today. And what did we say a grievance was? All temptation to tell yourself, if this were different, I'd be happy. If they were different, I'd be happy. If they spoke or acted differently, then I'd be happy. If this situation or circumstance changed, then I would be happy. Stop using your mind to come up with everything except your own mind that needs to be changed. So tell yourself and respond to your temptation to hold grievances in this form. Tell yourself, holding grievances is the opposite of God's plan for salvation, and only God's plan for salvation will work. Holding grievances is the opposite of love's plan for peace and happiness for me, and only God's plan for peace and happiness and love for me will work. Holding grievances is the opposite of God's plan. Holding grievance. Now, what's a grievance? Me constantly having scripts for everything and everybody outside of myself and telling myself that they need to change in order for me to be happy. That if something outside of myself were different, as if my happiness has nothing to do with what's going on inside of me. Stop acting like your happiness is dependent on anything or anybody outside yourself, and only God's plan will work. Try to remember only God's plan will work 6 or 7 times an hour. Try to tell yourself every time you think you're getting upset, only God's plan will work, only love's plan will work, only the Creator's plan will work. There could be no better way to spend 30 seconds or less than to remember the source of your happiness and to see the source of your happiness where the source of your happiness is. Remember the source of your happiness. Remember that only your Creator's plan will work. Remember that only the plan of love and truth will work. Remember that. Tell yourself that telling yourself if this were different, I would be happy. If this were different, I would be saved, is not the way to happiness. Your happiness comes from within as a result of the way you're looking at things and the things that you're telling yourself. It's what you're telling yourself that either makes you happy or unhappy. It's what you're telling yourself about the experience that's giving you the feelings that you're having. All the events and experiences in your life are neutral. All of the events and experiences in life are ultimately neutral. It's your interpretation. It's your interpretations of what's happening that's creating your happiness or your unhappiness. So don't waste any more time teaching yourself that your happiness is dependent on somebody else speaking or acting differently, or some situation, an external situation being different. Only God's plan, only love's plan. And what is love's plan? That you ask your Creator, what do you want me to do? Where do you want me to go? What would you have me say? Who do you want me to say it to? So I'm gonna do a quick recap, because this is one of my favorite, most powerful Course in Miracles lessons. I'm a full-time teacher of A Course in Miracles. I do it on a donation basis. If you'd like to make a donation, a financial expression of appreciation, then go to www.earlpurdy.com, earlpurdy.com. If you want to use Venmo or another one of those type of cash apps, my email address is earlpurdy@earlpurdy.com, earlpurdy@earlpurdy.com. I'm available for one-on-one personal sessions called clarity sessions, where I work with you with your issues to allow you to get past those issues and to have the peace and joy that this is promising. I've also been a professional soul purpose astrologer and numerologist for over 40 years, and I can bring that into the session if you're open and receptive to it. There is a divine plan for your life. Also, I do A Course in Miracles on Facebook Live on the Earl Purdy page on Sundays at 1 p.m. Mountain Time. Please follow my page and make sure that you like the page so that you can be notified whenever I come online. So we want to stick together. We're the mighty companions. And of course, on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Mountain Time on Facebook Live, Earl Purdy, on the Earl Purdy page, I do what I call hardcore Course in Miracles. And that's what this is, a hardcore Course in Miracles presentation. So let me do a quick review of what we heard. Listen to this 4 times. Listen or watch this at least 4 times, because it's through repetition and remembering. It's through repetition and remembering that you change your mind and give yourself a new belief. Are you ready? Now remember this. Only God's plan for your happiness will work. Only the plan of God for your happiness will work. Do you know that there's a wrong plan for happiness? And what that wrong plan or ego plan is that you should hold grievances toward everybody. Now, what does that mean? It means that you should maintain that if someone else spoke or acted differently, if some external event or circumstance were changed, then you would be happy. So the ego plan, the plan that will never work, is for you to believe that the source of your happiness is always something outside yourself or somebody outside yourself. So what's a grievance? A grievance is a declaration and an assertion in which you believe that says, a grievance says, if this were different, I would be happy. If this were different, I would be happy. If they were different, I would be happy. So the change of mind that's required for happiness is demanded of everybody except you. That's the insane plan. Don't use that insane plan anymore. Don't tell yourself another situation is going to serve better, another person is going to serve better. That's not what's going to be the thing that's going to ultimately cause your happiness. What's going to cause your happiness is recognizing that your ego, the part of you that believes you're separate from your source, it has a plan, but that plan is seek and do not find. And you don't want to waste any more of your time putting your energy into what will never work as far as giving you consistent, permanent happiness and joy. So you want to move in the direction of God's plan. So first thing you do is you tell yourself, God's plan and only God's plan for my salvation will work. Only God's plan for my happiness will work. That means other plans won't work. Other plans won't work. God's plan for happiness will work, but other plans won't work. Other plans other than the plan of love will not work. There are no possible alternatives to your Creator's plan that will work. You didn't create yourself. It's time for you to recognize you didn't create yourself. And the only problem that you have, according to A Course in Miracles, is a communication problem. You don't know how to communicate with your higher self. You don't know how to communicate with your Creator. The first thing you have to do to be able to communicate with your Creator is let go of this idea that you have a punishing Creator, a fearful Creator. You don't. The Creator is unconditional love. And the Creator has a plan for you, a plan for you. So what should you do? What should you do? You should ask these 4 questions of your Creator. And this is what you should ask. What would you have me do? What would you have me do? Where would you have me go? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say, and to whom? So ask God, what do you want me to do? Where do you want me to go? What do you want me to say? And who do you want me to say it to? What do you, say it with me. What do you want me to do? Where do you want me to go? What do you want me to say? Who do you want me to say it to? What do you want me to do, God? Where would you have me go, God? What would you have me say? What do you want me to do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say? And to whom? And to whom? That's what you do. You go, what do you want me to do? Where do you want me to go? What do you want me to say? Who do you want me to say it to? What do you want me to do, God? Where do you want me to go, God? What do you want me to say? Who do you want me to say it to? And then give God full charge. Give God full charge of the rest of the practice period. Let your Creator tell you what needs to be done by you. Say to yourself, holding grievances is the opposite of God's plan for salvation. Holding grievances is the opposite of God's plan for salvation. And only God's plan will work. Only God's plan will work. Only God's plan will work. And remember that holding grievances is the opposite of God's plan for your happiness. And only God's plan will work. And only God's plan will work. Mighty companions, I cannot emphasize enough how important this lesson is that we practice in this session. This is the key to happiness. This is the key to happiness. The plan of always making your happiness dependent on somebody else speaking or acting differently, behaving differently. Your plan of thinking that the next person will better serve the next situation is going to give me the ultimate happiness. That is the plan that will not work. And don't forget, one of the easiest ways to tell why it will not work It won't work because you cannot control how other people act or speak or behave. You can't control outside events, really. You can't really control the outer. It's the inner that you must change to have a different outer. And so remember, when the next time you're telling yourself, if this were different, I would be saved. If this were different, I would be happy. You are using the plan that will not work. How can you tell when you're using the plan that will not work? You will feel confused. You will feel miserable. You will have a deep sense of failure and despair. If you're feeling any of those things, you're using your plan and not God's plan. So what should you do? You should ask God, the Creator, very specifically, what do you want me to do? Where do you want me to go? What do you want me to say? And who do you want me to say it to? I love you. You are awesome. I appreciate you. And may the course be with you. Love you, mighty companions. And share this video. Share this video.